The Department of Health and Human Services says it will provide major funding for a portable, single-use PCR test. The American medical company Visby is behind the revolutionary palm-sized device, which is said to produce results in less than 30 minutes. HHS announced today it's investing $12.3 million to speed up the development and deployment of these tests, which are designed to be used in the comfort of your own home. Dr. Adam De La Zerda is the founder and CEO of Visby. He's also an assistant professor at Stanford University's School of Medicine, and he's joining us now to talk about this. Explain to us, doctor, how does your device work, and how can it produce results in just minutes without having to send a sample to a lab?
Yes, absolutely. Hey, Anne-Marie. Hey, Vlad. Good morning. Thanks so much for having me. So here's what this announcement recognition from the federal government means. So today, if you want to test somebody for COVID or any other infection for that matter, you would need to collect a sample. And if you want a laboratory accurate result, you need to send it out to the laboratory for a PCR test. These are typically big instruments the size of a sofa that cost close to $1 million. What we were able to do over the last 10 years here with a collaboration with physicians and scientists is to find a way to take those big instruments and miniaturize them down to this. And the device I'm holding here is really an entire PCR machine miniaturized in this small little form. This is an actual PCR test with all the bells and whistles of it. The way it works is you collect the sample from the nose. You can go to the front part of the nose. Once you put it in here in this small little opening, all you have to do is just to close this lid like so. And now you press those 3 buttons, 1, 2, 3, and you are done. All you have to do at this point is just wait less than 30 minutes, and you'll see here either 1 line lights up or 2 line lights up. 1 means you're negative, 2 means you're positive. And at that point, you can really make that decision of what you really want to do. Now, in practicality, what this means is, let's say you want to go visit your grandmother, and you want to do the right thing, you want to go and get tested. Well, today you have to make this compromise. Either you get speed or you get accuracy. You can go and get one of the rapid tests, but you know these are not 100% accurate, so you might be putting your grandmother at risk. The alternative, of course, is you can collect a sample, send it for the PCR test, the laboratory 100% accurate test. But of course, the challenge there is that, well, by the time you get the test result, it's been a few days. All it tells you is that a few days ago, you were negative for COVID. What you really want to know is, well, right now, am I negative for COVID because I'm going to visit my grandmother right now? And that's really where we came in and we said, we do not want to compromise. There has to be a better way that we can get both speed and accuracy at the same time. And this is really what led to the development of this device.
So this sounds really good. Yesterday, the White House had a COVID briefing, and they announced that the White House is going to be buying, the government was going to be buying 8.5 million rapid coronavirus tests from an Australian company. Sounds sort of similar to the way your device works. Can you tell us what kind of the big differences are?
Yeah, of course. So really, if you look at the ocean of tests out there, broadly speaking, you have the PCR test and you have the non-PCR test. These are typically those rapid tests, antigen tests, fall in that category. It's not that the antigen tests are bad. They're certainly better than not testing at all, for sure. But it's the quality of the result in terms of being able to give you a reliable answer that you can really rely on. Well, it's not as good as PCR. So going back to that example I gave before, when it comes to people that matter to you, really, you may want to get a real accurate result, because remember, getting a false negative test result could put people that you love at risk. By the way, in a similar way, a false positive result is also not great. People, for example, who are running nursing homes need to really make sure that before they move one of their residents to the COVID ward, that they truly are positive. It's not a falsely positive result. But also, if you think about it, you're about to go on the trip you wanted to Hawaii, and at the airport you get tested, you wouldn't want to get a false positive result, and there goes your trip that you were planning on just because the test gave you the wrong result. So again, there's an ocean of tests out there. We really position ourselves in the place where we are the laboratory accurate PCR, the same as you would get if you send the sample over to the laboratory, only now you get it at the palm of your hands, as opposed to having to wait for several days.
So doctor, as journalists, we're sometimes very skeptical of things, especially when they are new. And so I want you to talk a little bit about how you went about developing this test? Because, you know, there's been news in the past couple of years out of Silicon Valley about all sorts of miracle medical technology products, some that pan out and some don't. You actually started working on this notion of miniaturized testing. It's been a couple of years now, right? I mean, I think you first started doing this for STDs. So how did that work that you initially envisioned 6 or 7 years ago translate to a COVID test?
Yeah, absolutely. So indeed, as you're saying, we've been working on this for a number of years now with a group of physicians and scientists. You can see actually the group here behind me here, we're now several hundred people in the company. The focus has always been we are working towards replicating the exact same big PCR machine. As in, if you're a virus and I put you into one of these, you will never be able to tell the difference. It will feel the same to you. If there's a way to truly replicate the exact same technology in a small little device, well, that's what we've been going after. That's why we'd go after. And you're right, we did start with a sexually transmitted infection test. We completed those clinical trials. Those were sponsored by the National Institute of Health, by the NIH. And the results of those clinical trials actually have just been published also, and are currently in review by the FDA. And what basically happened last year is we found ourselves in the first quarter of 2020 with just having finished the clinical trials for the sexually transmitted infection test, thinking through, well, what do we want to work on next while the FDA is reviewing our sexually transmitted infection test results. And of course, we all know what started in Q1 of last year. And it was just very obvious that we have to stand up as a company and to the task and start developing a test for COVID. Now, the good news was that we did not have to start from scratch. As you pointed out, we did develop a PCR test for sexually transmitted infections. And the actual physical instrument I'm holding here is a PCR machine. The hardware is identical between this and a sexually transmitted infection test. Only difference is just the chemistry we're loading in there. And that was what we had to develop here. And everyone here just worked truly day and night, no weekends, no nothing, just to get this thing out the door as quickly as possible.
So you guys are on the fast track, like you mentioned. You want to get it out the door. Any idea when the FDA may approve it? What your timeline is that you're hoping for? And to tell you the truth, it sounds a little expensive. I know with this other test, I think currently that other test that the government they talked about in the COVID briefing yesterday was about $30. Do you have any idea how much your test might cost?
Yes. So in terms of getting it out as quickly as possible, that's certainly our number one priority. And it is not just getting it out, but also scaling up the production as much as possible. Also, again, the federal government have been really, really generous with us a few months ago, giving us close to $10 million just to focus on scaling up our production capacity so we can scale up and produce as many as possible. We did receive the FDA authorization back in September of last year, but that is not yet for actual home use. We will get there over time. And in fact, the grant that was just announced this morning by the agency at Health and Human Services will help us make it and take it all the way there. And part of it would also be to invest a lot in reducing the cost of it, because again, the complexity of this device is very high, far greater than antigen tests and non-PCR tests, because like I mentioned before, every single bit of those big $1 million sofa-sized instrument is in every one of these small devices. It might look simple from the outside, but from the inside, it's really rather complicated. By the way, if you open up one of our patents, for example, you'll be able to see how it's actually constructed inside and all the components inside. So that's certainly a huge focus of ours to not just scale up the production capacity as quickly as we can, but also as we scale up the volume, bring down the cost of production. I should mention we're manufacturing this device here in the United States, 100% produced here in the United States, not just because we're proud to be an American company, but also because it is so critically important at this time of a pandemic to be able to be in control of our own future. And really behind me here, you can see the actual production lines that we're running, and we're scaling up as quickly as we can.
Well, Dr. Adam De La Zerda, it sounds like a game changer. If it is successful, thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.